Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. This is Joe Firestone for Empowering Democracy. Topic for tonight, among other topics. Well, our topics for tonight are really news topics because this is a Thursday show. And the way this program is going right now, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're doing examination of the funding of candidates. And Tuesday and Thursday, we're doing news items that are relevant for empowering democracy and also dump the corruption. Okay. So this is a Thursday, so we're doing news items relevant for dump the corruption. Uh, of course, one of the topics connected to that, for which I've named this stream, is can a new speaker emerge soon? Tonight, I am joined by two friends of mine, frequently on our panels on this station, by Dee Pierce uh, at Around the World with Brandy and
Yes, hello.
hello, and also with Gregory Mallard, the extraordinary activist from Georgia, who has been proving week after week how brilliant he is. And we are very honored to have him again tonight on this panel. He's about to start a new streaming program of his own. Uh, and that series goes by the title of Revolution Evolution,
Evolution.
Greg. Is
Yes, sir.
that right?
Yep.
Okay, Revolution Evolution. I guess that's a very apt title for the show, isn't it? Because people have been talking about a revolution since like 2015. And what you're talking about is the evolution of that revolution.
Yeah, and I've also it's not just 2015 that people were talking about a revolution. It was as early as I think when Mike Gravel originally ran in 2008. Like there was talks of a political revolution even back then that I have discovered that it goes all the way back to 2007, 2008, when Mike Gravel ran a strong progressive challenge against the Democratic political establishment, even back then. So I'm here to finish where Mike Gravel, Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein, Howie Hawkins, the whole progressive shabam. I'm here to finish off where as the next generation.
So you are here to finish us all off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I'd love to see that. So, of course, there's the news this week. Kevin McCarthy doesn't have the votes. We kind of knew he didn't have the votes, but it's still very striking to see that in ballot after ballot, we have Hakeem Jeffries with 212 votes and Kevin McCarthy with, I guess, the first ballot he got 203, then he got 202, then he got 201. They're through 10 ballots now. They're through 10 ballots and they are hung up. Freedom Caucus has 20 people standing firm, and some of them are never going to go for Kevin. I mean, they've just said it publicly. I'm never for Kevin. I'm not for Kevin. Of course, that's the most extreme of them. But the point being that that group of 20 but people who we generally consider to be rather crazy, at least from a conventional politics point of view, what are they really asking for from Kevin McCarthy? What are they really demanding? They seem to be demanding more democracy in the House for House members. They want to be able to introduce a motion for Kevin McCarthy to vacate the chair and to have that motion be introduced by anyone and get a floor vote. Uh, if they do adopt that as a rule, and Kevin McCarthy evidently has offered that as a compromise to get some more votes, that will mean that anybody will be able to introduce a vacate the chair motion, whether that person is a Republican or whether that person is a Democrat or whether that person is an independent. On any given day, they'll be able to introduce such a motion and get a floor vote for it. Maybe not on that specific day. There may be some amount of business days, but presumably it's going to be within 3 or 4 business days. Something like that, they'll be able to get a floor vote.
I have been laughing at this whole deal. Like it's so hilarious to watch the dog and pony show go on.
It
Like,
is hilarious, but that's the mainstream story about it. That it's a bunch of congressional nonsense, and that it's all personalities, and that's that. But that's not the real news story. The real story is that they're demanding that the speaker position be much weaker in relation to ordinary congresspeople, so that ordinary congresspeople will have a greater voice in governing the United States. And don't we want this? In 2021, I and other people along with me, hey, Lisa, were trying to get Nancy Pelosi, first of all, removed as Speaker. And then we were also trying to get committee positions for squad members and other progressives, rules changes, and generally speaking, greater democracy in the House. Those were the demands we wanted the squad and people close to them to vote for. We were not trying to get just a floor vote for Medicare for All. We were trying to get multiple floor votes on various issues that were never getting any floor votes. And we were trying to get these rules changes that would get rid of pay-go and also ensure floor votes if there were 20 co-sponsors for a bill, and also committee positions for them. So giving new people coming into Congress a greater voice. It was about democratization of things for House members, both for Democrats and for Republicans and for independents as well. So the interesting thing to me is that even though these Republican House members, the Freedom Caucus, really a bunch of reprehensible people in general, are also asking for democratization of the House in ways similar to what our progressive group was asking for in January of 2021. But the mainstream press is not looking at this from a democratization point of view. And that's what the important story is. It would weaken the speaker. And if the rule went forward in Congress after Congress, the backbenchers would be stronger and the speaker would be weaker. Have you heard anybody telling this story except me?
I've heard of this also from Rejoy Gray, and I saw something earlier on Twitter from Sabby in regards to all this, like saying that it's just nonsense and it's all childish. Like you have both parties up there in power acting like petulant children.
That's not the story. That's not the story. They seem not to be asking for anything substantive. But what they're asking for is to be let into power so that on a daily basis they can have some power. That's the real story, because the House has been run by an oligarchy for years, whether it was a Republican oligarchy or a Democratic oligarchy. And that means the backbenchers in both parties and the new people, like the progressives in the Democratic Party and the crazies in the Republican Party, don't get to have any say. And the Freedom Caucus is trying to change that. And that's fundamentally important, because then new bills can be introduced all the time. Short bills can be introduced all the time. And they will be able to get floor votes for all kinds of bills. And there will also be no need for omnibus bills at the end of sessions, which nobody can read and nobody can understand, and they have to blindly vote for, and are largely written by the lobbyists anyway. So this is a big story, and the mainstream media are trivializing it, which is what they usually do, because their correspondents are nitwits who don't understand what's going on. That goes for Lisa Desjardins as well, of PBS. She must be a nitwit too, or not able to understand what's going on in the Congress and what the real issues are. Anyway, that was the first thing that I want to cover. And we got something in the private chat here. Oh, Greg went to get something to drink. Okay, so. Okay, sorry, I guess that wasn't very private. Okay, anyway, the next item that I wanted to cover was actually in a piece. It was a piece from The Lever on December 2022. Okay, December 20th, 2022, from Andrew Perez. Congress still protecting dark money donors. This is news relevant to Dump the Corruption, of course. I'm going to share the screen for the article. Okay, what it's about is there was a series of measures. God bless you, honey. In Congress, annual omnibus spending bills show that Democrats have given up their fight to end the dark money era. God bless you again. And as part of its year-end omnibus spending bill, Congress once again helped dark money donors hide their identities from the public and ensure the government cannot crack down on dark money nonprofits that spend the bulk of their revenue on politics. With Republicans set to take over the House in January, Democratic lawmakers are throwing in the towel. We know now they did throw in the towel on efforts to end the political dark money era. So they set back, dumped the corruption efforts for a while with this spending bill. That was an important thing that was in the spending bill. Provisions in the $1.7 trillion spending bill, which is often used as a vehicle to enact controversial measures because it funds critical government operations, will prohibit the Biden administration officials from doing much, if anything, to regulate dark money groups on their own for the rest of his first term. So that's what the Democrats gave away in the negotiations. Democrats' surrender on dark money comes after several failed efforts to compel politically active nonprofits to disclose their donors. And as dark money becomes increasingly enmeshed within our political systems. Got another article about that coming up also. Ever since the Supreme Court's 2010 Citizens United decision allowed anonymous donations to flow into elections, scroll down too fast, both parties have become increasingly reliant on dark pools of cash to fund TV ad wars over presidential elections, congressional races, and even judicial confirmation campaigns. The situation allows ultra wealthy mystery donors to exert unprecedented influence in Washington. Well, we kind of know who these donors are anyway. I mean, I don't know if it's that but big a mystery, but we don't have the specific information as to which of these donors supported what. Okay, we don't have that kind of information, and that would be useful. But we know damn well that Sheldon Adelson and this guy Silverstein, okay, and the Blackstone people, we know they're throwing in millions and millions of dollars in campaigns, and they're buying people across the board. They're using organizations like AIPAC to funnel money to try to work against candidates who are progressive or who are independent, who are not part of the establishment. Okay. Here, Andrew Perez points out the dark money arms race recently culminated in a historic $1.6 billion donation raised by conservative legal activist by Leonard Leo. He was Donald Trump's former judicial advisor, helped to select the 3 new Supreme Court justices who have been so terrible for the rest of the country, right? Democratic lawmakers made several attempts during Biden's first term to pass campaign finance reform bills targeting dark money groups, including as recently as this fall. The most recent effort failed due to the party's refusal to eliminate or reform filibuster rules requiring 60 votes to advance most legislation in the Senate. Okay, so really that's the story. That's what went on. I'm going to skip a bunch of things here. Democrats pushed to do away with this man in one of their failed campaign finance and democracy reform bills. A standalone measure has sat in committee since early 2021. It bans on contributions of a certain kinds. Another long-standing rider included in the omnibus bill prohibits the Treasury Department and Internal Revenue Service from issuing any new regulations regarding whether social welfare nonprofits, commonly known as dark money groups, qualify for their tax exemption. So no new regulation of the dark money groups by the IRS. Using IRS guidelines, and actually a sort of rule that's been in place since 1958 in the Eisenhower administration, dark money groups are not supposed to devote more than half of their expenditures towards politics. This rider means the IRS cannot even enforce its existing weak regulations on that matter. Yep. That's true. Quote, these damaging dark money poison pills are a long-time cancer on our democracy, and unfortunately they have yet to be cured, unquote, Lisa Gilbert, Executive Vice President of Public Citizens, said to The Lever, quote, "We'll continue the fight to remove them and enable agencies to act to grapple with the secret money surge we have seen play out ever since the overreaching Citizens United decision came down 13 years ago," unquote. And that's the end of that particular article. It's a short one. Any comments, Greg? Any comments, Dee?
It's all craziness any way you look at it. Like, we have not seen anything like this since like over 100 years ago.
And nothing gets done.
And nothing gets done because of it. Okay, let me get on to another piece. Okay, there was a piece of good news, okay, in relation to this. I have some good news and some bad news for the rest of this as we go forward. Let me hit this next one. This next one is about Lena Khan, who is one of the bright spots in the Biden administration. Certainly a bright spot. This is a victory for American workers that I personally would love to see. There's a picture, okay, of Lena Khan. Quote, "Victory for American workers," unquote. FTC proposes a ban on non-compete clauses. If any of you had worked for larger businesses, even smaller businesses, you know that if they're in the research area, the policy area, the technology area, they all have non-compete clauses. Senator Elizabeth Warren noted that, quote, "Non-compete clauses give companies unfair power over workers." I've always felt that was true. "Enabling them to cut wages and benefits without fear of workers finding a new job or starting their own business," unquote. I've always felt that was so unfair. It's one of my favorite gripes about being in conventional businesses. This piece was done by Kenny Stansel for Common Dreams on January 5th, 2023. That, of course, was today. The progressive advocacy groups and lawmakers celebrated Thursday after the FTC proposed a new rule that, if finalized, would prohibit employers from including non-compete clauses in employment contracts, which the agency described as, quote, "a widespread and often exploitative practice that suppresses wages, hampers innovation, and blocks entrepreneurs from starting new businesses," unquote. Given the prevalence of non-compete agreements, which prevent roughly 1 in 5 U.S. workers from freely changing jobs, the FTC estimates the new proposed rule could increase wages by nearly $300 billion per year and expand career opportunities for about 30 million Americans. I think that's an underestimate. But even at those figures, we're talking about big stuff. The American Economic Liberties Project, AELP, called the FTC's 3-1 vote to initiate a rulemaking process to ban the use of non-compete clauses a victory for American workers and fair competitive markets. There's a quote here from Sarah Miller, who is AELP Executive Director. By the way, somebody who's high up in the AELP is Matt Stoller, who often writes on stock market issues and concentration of economic power here in the United States, and who's a trenchant critic of this, and the author of a book entitled Goliath, which is a book I highly recommend to everybody. I'm not going to go through any more of this. The story is that it's a proposal I recommend to everybody from Lena Khan's by Federal Trade Commission. By the way, she filed Wednesday to force 3 corporations and 2 individuals to lift non-compete restrictions they imposed on thousands of workers. Wednesday's crackdown, that is Wednesday, January 4th, marked the first time the FTC has sued to halt unlawful non-compete clauses. Came just weeks after the agency voted 3-1 to issue a new policy statement restoring its commitment to, quote, rigorously enforcing, unquote, the long neglected Section 5 ban on, quote, unfair methods of competition, unquote. Well, they're going to get pushback on this, of course. Someone's going to bring it up to the Supreme Court, who is going to say they don't really have the power to regulate this, and it's just going to be another big issue, and probably is going to feed a part of our Dump the Corruption campaign, which applies certainly to the Supreme Court, and which involves the idea of packing the Supreme Court and getting rid of these damn neoliberals who are dominating it. I guess that's all I'm going to say about that, because there are 2 other big stories coming up. There was a statement from Heidi Shierholz of the API. She said, quote, why do we need this rule? Shierholz asked on Twitter, quote, the only source of power non-unionized workers have vis-a-vis their employers is their ability to quit and take a job elsewhere. So, surprise, employers are using non-compete agreements to cut that source of worker power off at its knees. Of course, that's been going on for many, 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 many years. Some companies are famous for their non-compete agreements. IBM, you cannot have a thought when you're working for IBM that does not belong to IBM, or so they claim anyway. They force you into signing these kinds, of contracts. I know people who have turned down jobs with them due to these non-compete contracts, who said, I'm not having any of this crap. And they've left that. So, and the next piece of news, folks, applies to one of the favorite nations of the 3 of us, specifically Israel. So let me find that and put that article up on the screen. Yet another outrage from the Israeli government. Coming up. It hasn't been completed yet, but it's coming up. So, that is Israeli Justice Minister Yariv Levin, seen here in 2017. He's proposed sweeping judiciary reforms widely condemned in his country and beyond, right? Israeli government accused of, quote, assassinating democracy with proposed judiciary overhaul. Quote, it is not necessary to send the Proud Boys to storm the capital to attempt a coup, unquote, said one former Israeli ambassador. Quote, when you abuse a tiny legislative majority to crush the judiciary and the nature of Israel's democracy is also a coup, unquote. By Brett Williams, January 5th, 2023. Israeli liberals and critics sounded the alarm Thursday over a plan by Israel's new far-right government to dramatically limit the power of the country's judiciary in part by allowing a simple parliamentary majority to overturn rulings by the Supreme Court. On Wednesday, Israeli Justice Minister Yariv Levin, a member of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, released a set of proposals he said were aimed at, quote, strengthening democracy, rehabilitating governance, restoring faith in the judicial system, and rebalancing the three branches of government, unquote. However, opponents of the plan condemned it as a political coup, quote unquote, and a dagger in the rule of law. The night of January 4th, 2023 will go down in history as the beginning of the regime coup in Israel, on its way to becoming a clone of Hungary/Poland/Russia/Turkey. Journalist by Yossi Verter, and by the way, that's my name in Hebrew, Yossi, wrote for the liberal Israeli newspaper Haaretz. Haaretz has the status in Israel, same kind of status the New York Times has here in the States. Quote, the democratically elected government is assassinating democracy for the glory of so-called democracy on the way to the next step, the annulment of Netanyahu's trial, unquote, he added, referring to the prime minister's ongoing corruption case. U.S.-based Partners for Progressive Israel tweeted, quote, judicial review gone, separation of powers dead, checks and balances, kiss it goodbye, unquote. And one guy talked about the urbanization of Israeli democracy. Urbanization after the Hungarian president, Viktor Orban. The most contentious part of Levin's plan is an override clause that would allow a 50% plus one parliamentary majority to override rulings issued by the Supreme Court, which also sits as the High Court of Justice and has been accused by human rights groups of giving legal cover to war crimes and crimes against humanity, including apartheid and the illegal occupation of Palestine. As Haaretz Amir Tibon noted, quote, Israel does not have a constitution. It doesn't have a written constitution anyway. And the separation between the legislative and executive branches is very weak, as the government almost always holds a majority in the Knesset. This makes the Supreme Court the only institution with the power to limit government actions and legislation passed by a parliamentary majority. By the way, folks, the same system exists in the UK and in many other countries. Now Levin wants to take that power away. For example, if the government passed a law that clearly favored ultra-Orthodox citizens and hurt the rights of secular Israelis, and the Supreme Court then struck it down, all it would need to take to reinstate the discriminatory law is 61 votes in the Knesset. Of course, the current government of Israel is full of ultra-Orthodox fanatics. And not only ones who are religious fanatics, such as the ones who frequently campaign against the Israeli state, but also Zionist fanatics who have a very extreme interpretation, of Zionism. Also, Levin's proposal would change how Israel's judges are selected. Today, the Judicial Appointments Committee includes politicians from both the government and the opposition, judges, and representatives of the Israel Bar Association. Tibon explained, quote, Levin wants to increase the power of the politicians and decrease that of judges and lawyers, effectively giving the government the power to appoint judges and, critically, Supreme Court justices. The Israel Bar Association opposes Levin's proposal. So, okay, this is enough to show that this is just a part, okay, of the continuous seizures of power by this Israeli government in service, okay, of the fanatics who want to take over all the land between the river and the sea in Palestine. So I thought you should know about this other outrage coming up, okay, in Israel to kill Israeli democracy, the little of it that is left. Okay. So I'm now going to go on to my final piece.
And it's a very dangerous road to be going down.
Oh, yeah, it is. I mean, it's quite clear that Israel, I think Israel's already a fascist state, but even if you think it's not because there's some small amount of liberty still in it, okay, if they get rid of the role of the judiciary in limiting the government, that's the last vestige of something that can control some of the fascist actions of the current government. I want to share screen now for the final piece of news I wanted to cover here tonight. There, of course, is Kevin McCarthy. Dems raise concerns over, quote, creepy, unquote, role of McCarthy super PAC in speaker talks. This is by Jake Johnson, January 5th, 2023. Why is a billionaire super PAC aligned with Republican Rep Kevin McCarthy playing a role in talks over who will become the next Speaker of the House? Democratic lawmakers and campaign finance watchdogs raised that question Wednesday after the Congressional Leadership Fund and the Club for Growth, another right-wing organization bankrolled by billionaires, announced a deal under which the CLF, again, the Congressional Leadership Fund, won't spend any money on, quote, open seat primaries in safe Republican districts, a key demand of McCarthy opponents who felt their preferred candidates, more Freedom Caucus types, had been snubbed by the deep-pocketed super PAC, that is the super PAC controlled by McCarthy, the Congressional Leadership Fund. As Fortune reported Wednesday, quote, far-right lawmakers have complained that their preferred candidates for the House were being treated unfairly as the campaign fund put its resources elsewhere. In other words, it's like what's happening, okay, in the Democratic Party, where the DCCC is never putting any funds in back of progressive candidates, but always putting funds in favor of their challengers in key primary races. So CLS spent nearly $260 million during the 2022 election cycle, including millions to help to re-elect Republicans who are trying to tank Kevin McCarthy's bid for the speakership. The super PAC's top donors in the midterm cycle were banking scion Timothy Mellon, Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman, and Citadel CEO Kenneth Griffin, all billionaires. The deal between CLF and the Fund for Growth came as McCarthy continued his frantic efforts to cobble together the necessary 218 votes, offering a number of concessions to Republicans who've rejected the California maker in 6 consecutive votes, now 10 consecutive votes by now, because that's what happened today. There were another 4 consecutive votes, and Kevin McCarthy lost all 4. I don't know if there's going to be any more tonight or were they going to kick it over till tomorrow. Of course, there's the public stuff going on in front of you and all these votes, and then there's the backroom stuff going on probably all night with these people. Senator Brian Schatz was among those who raised concerns, he's a Democrat from Hawaii, over the CLF and the Club for Growth's role in the ongoing speakership debacle. And he says, it is creepy, quote, it is creepy that dark money super PACs are explicitly part of a negotiation regarding who becomes Speaker of the United States. Isn't that creepy from a dump the corruption point of view? It
Extremely creepy.
Creepy and corrupt. The 2 C's, creepy and corrupt. Federal law prohibits candidates from coordinating with super PACs, though the independence mandate is often flouted in practice. In a press release, CLF and Club for Growth insisted that no one in Congress or their staff has directed or suggested CLF take any action here, unquote. I'll read that again. Federal law prohibits candidates from coordinating with super PACs, though the independence mandate is often flouted in practice. Club for Growth insisted, quote, no one in Congress or their staff has directed or suggested that CLF take any action here. So a joint press release, no one in Congress or their staff has directed or suggested that CLF take any action here, unquote. Interesting that an independent super PAC, I should say, quote again, interesting that an independent super PAC that isn't supposed to coordinate with members of Congress comes to an agreement to benefit a specific member of Congress, unquote, responded Adam Smith, Action Fund Director of End Citizens United. By the way, Adam Smith has no notion of how to end a CU. No notion at all. He's completely ineffectual. A tweet from Punchbowl News. Breaking in Punchbowl News, Club for Growth and the Congressional Leadership Fund have cut a major agreement. It paves the way for the club to drop its opposition to Kevin McCarthy's speaker bid. CLF has agreed to not spend money in open primaries in safe districts. That was a tweet from Punchbowl News. Adam Smith said, I'll just say I've never had to write what we just did is legal, quote. Quote, what we just did is legal, unquote, in a press release before. And that was a quote tweet of a quote from Jacqueline Alamani. A significant development per at a tweet, by Mariana reports. CLF and Club for Growth come to key agreement in support of Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. You know already what the agreement is, but there was a statement from CLF President Dan Constant. Kevin McCarthy has effectively led House Republicans from the minority to the majority, and we want to see him continue to lead the party so we can pick up seats for the 3rd cycle in a row. CLF will not spend in any open seat primaries in safe Republican districts, and CLF will not grant resources. I read that before. But CLF will continue to support incumbents in primaries as well as challengers in districts that affect of the majority, which proved to be critical in winning the majority in 2022. Statement from Club for Growth President David McIntosh. This agreement on super PACs fulfills a major concern we have pressed for. We understand Leader McCarthy and members are working on a rules agreement that will meet the principles we have set out previously. Assuming these principles are met, Club for Growth will support Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. The Club for Growth bills itself as a leading free enterprise advocacy group that promotes tax cuts and deregulation. Originally opposed McCarthy's run for Speaker, pushing him to agree to a number of concessions backed by far-right Republicans. But the organization, which has received funding from the Koch network and other right-wing forces, suggested Wednesday that it will support McCarthy if he upholds the concessions he has offered thus far. This agreement on super PACs fulfills a major concern we have pressed for, said David McIntosh. Well, the CLF Club for Growth was seen as a major victory for the anti-McCarthy faction. It is not clear whether it will be enough to end the impasse. The House is set to convene again Thursday at noon. It didn't end the impasse today, by the way, folks. Representative Ro Khanna, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, argued in a tweet Wednesday that, quote, these types of shady backroom deals which indebt our lawmakers to corporations and special interests are corrupting our democracy. This is why I started the bipartisan Congressional No PAC Caucus and have never taken PAC money and refused to start. Folks, we will be checking that out on Dump the Corruption tomorrow night at 9 p.m. We will be checking out whether he has never taken PAC money and refuses to start. I'll bet that statement is not true. So anyway, that's that one. So there are machinations going on with super PACs to try to get Kevin McCarthy into office. That might be barely legal or not. We do not know. Okay, but again, to go back to the major issue here, what this fight is about inside of the Republican caucus that is stopping this election of Speaker right now is whether the House will be significantly democratized, okay, or not. One concession that has supposedly been made so far, I spoke of earlier, is that if anybody can propose a vacate the chair motion, okay, on any day, that's going to democratize the House considerably. Of course, we have to see how it works out. It might not work out. Okay, according to the plan, okay, of these people. Okay, I certainly think that it may be that people are going to run amok and they're going to propose so many vacate the chair motions that it has a tendency to paralyze the Congress. Steve Wolfbrand said 11 rounds of votes, still nothing. And Lisa said in an earlier comment, she said, our progressive effort was handed to the opposition. The Freedom Caucus is proving this would have worked. They're getting rules concessions. Yeah, we know it would have worked. Doesn't take a genius to know that our progressive effort would have worked. There were enough votes to stop Nancy Pelosi from becoming the speaker in 2021. The arithmetic was there. I have it in a table. It was there. There was no way Kevin McCarthy could have won at that time. If the squad stuck together, Nancy Pelosi was toast, no matter how many ballots they had. If the squad stuck together, they could have denied her the speakership. And then they could have negotiated for rules concessions with one of the people who would have liked to have become her successor. That's what replaced Pelosi January 3rd, which was what our movement was called, was about. But the people who earlier started to advocate for making a deal with Pelosi, which she would not have kept. She might have kept the letter of the deal, but never the spirit of the deal, because she can never be trusted. They were looking to trade their votes for a promise from her that they would get a Medicare for All a floor vote. So yes, the squad was very timid in 2021. They caved. All the other progressives caved too. But the Jimmy Dore proposal that there should be a trade of their votes for a floor vote for Medicare for All was lacking vision and was poorly constructed and did not offer enough of a reward to progressives in trying to get them to displace Nancy Pelosi for somebody else. Our movement did. It offered them committee positions and rules changes and completely new roles inside of the House. It offered them a democratized House and the replacement of Nancy Pelosi, too. Jeff Denton says, the globalists didn't even let us choose our own presidential candidates. So I'm pretty sure that they don't let the politicians they own choose their speaker. I'm just trying to be logical. I mean, a Princeton study and Jimmy Carter both said, we're not living in a democracy. Jeff, we're not living in a democracy. That's right. But that does not mean that on any specific issue, in any specific situation, that the oligarchs are going to choose their own speaker. There's still the possibility of fuck-ups. There's still the possibility of getting things through. There are lots of times that what they want doesn't quite work out. On the other hand, they're almost always able to block bills that would fundamentally change the situation. So far, they've always been able to block bills that will change the situation that hardened after 2010, after the Supreme Court decision on CU.
Like the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, that candidates are never elected, they're always selected.
Yep. And the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a point there.
And he also said that this country is ran on mob rule.
Now, I don't think that's always true. I think it's more often run by the oligarchy and the rule of the oligarchy. And
And I
Steve,
think,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
and I also quote Jimmy Carter here that America is an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery.
Yes, but he said that more recently. He
He
did not.
said that in an Oprah interview.
Right, but he did not say that when he was president of the United States. Okay, I'm not sure it was true then. I'm not trying to criticize Jimmy Carter for not saying it back then. I'm pointing out that it might not have been the case back then, and that certainly he did not think it was the case back then. But he now thinks it's the case, and he's quite open about it. And Greg says, oh, Steve Wolfbrand said, Gregory, embarrassing to whom? And Greg said, to our country, Steve. And Greg said, our friends in the UK who say what they're doing is totally embarrassing. Yes. Kay said, yes, Greg, talking to a UK woman today who said the same. Steve said, I think the demands of the Republican rebels are pretty solid. Some overlap with progressive values. Yes, I think so too, Steve. But I think that it would be better to have a greater number of people coming together to ask for um, to run a vacate the chair motion. In other words, to have just one person doing it could result in too many vacate the chair motions. So Congress isn't able to get any business done. On the other hand, for a decent sized group of people, it should be pretty easy to get a vacate the chair motion. And one will carry more weight if it starts out with 10 or 20 people behind it. And the Freedom Caucus has enough people to be able to compromise on that. Okay, but it looks like Kevin McCarthy's already given away the store by saying that any individual could do it. So there it is. Steve Wolfbrand said, I think it was Abby Martin that interviewed Israeli citizens in the street. They were extremely racist and saying to kill a Palestinian before they grow up to become terrorists. Okay, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, that was disgusting, wasn't it?
Yes, it was horrific.
Really disgusting. I saw the Abby Martin video interviewing Israeli citizen Steve. Very racist against the Palestinian people. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of heartbreaking things going on in that region that, especially like the other night when Dee and I were live talking about the stray dog situation in Turkey, she could tell by the tone of my voice that normally I've got that big, open, cheerful voice and all that, but I had like a low tone because of how heartbreaking it was.
It was really heartbreaking. Yes.
Yes, it was. It was very. And the problem's still going on.
Yeah, I'd like to do a follow-up show on that here soon.
Yes, we need to.
Yeah, JD was right about forcing the vote, but he was wrong about what he wanted to force the vote for. He should have been forcing the vote, wanting to force the vote to replace Nancy Pelosi. He never said that. Steve Wolfbrand says, Robert, mostly Palestinian problems and speaker impasse. Robert, no guarantee that the Democrats would even vote for Medicare for all, even if they had forced the vote in 2021. Right, but if they had forced the vote to replace Pelosi, they could have blocked her. There were the numbers in the squad alone, not counting Ro Khanna, not counting Jamie Raskin or Joe Neguse or some other really lefty people,
Or maybe even a Katie Porter.
or maybe even a Katie Porter, just with the 6 squad people at that time. They could have blocked her for speaker because she didn't have the 6 votes to spare. And if they had stood tall, she would no longer have been the speaker starting in 2021. In the first 2 years of the Biden administration might have been very, very different in terms of what they got passed. I'm not saying they automatically would have passed the Medicare for All bill. I doubt that would have happened. But if Nancy Pelosi hadn't been the Speaker of the House, but someone like a Debbie Dingell had been the Speaker of the House instead, there is no way that $15 an hour minimum wage would not have gotten through. It would have gotten through because the House would have kicked that bill directly back up to the Senate and said, no $15 an hour, no bill. But Nancy Pelosi caved on that. She caved on the infrastructure bill, separating the hard infrastructure from the family infrastructure and from the green stuff. And she caved on the level of spending in that bill, okay, as well. She caved on so many things in Biden's first term. She was a terrible leader in that term. And she deserved to lose the House because she was terrible. Steve Wolfman said it would be nice to get everyone on the record, yes, about M4A. Yeah, if Nancy Pelosi had been defeated in 2021, we would have gotten people with the right speaker. We would have gotten people on the record for M4A, for the Green New Deal, for student for debt elimination, for paid family leave, permanent paid family leave, for child tax credits, for Roe v. Wade. For Roe v. Wade. I mean, Pelosi betrayed Roe v. Wade, the codification of Roe v. Wade. Steve Wolfran says, my dentist is killing my finances. Nothing like dentists to kill one's finances. That's why I have avoided dentists since I think it's 1993, isn't it?
Yeah.
I try to avoid them like the plague.
Yes. Yeah, I lost a tooth in front because I've avoided dentists since 1993, but my other teeth are fine, so I'm doing pretty well on that. Any further comments, Dee?
Not right now.
And
Okay.
another reason why, and for Medicare for all, that should be an incentive to dump the corruption in politics as well. If you want Medicare for all, you're going to have to dump the corrupt politicians, taking corporate money of any nature extremely toxic, and make these campaigns, these candidates, these incumbents who take the corporate PAC money toxic from here on out. Because if we do not make them toxic like nuclear waste, then we are failing ourselves. That you've got to make them look as if they're nuclear waste out there that needs to be cleaned up.
Yes.
And that's a great analogy to use, I think.
I think so too, Greg.
Yes, and I think so too. Clear that waste away, that toxic waste.
We have got to clean the toxic waste in our political system. We've got to do it on the local level. We've got to do it on the state level, the federal level, every level of government. We've got to eradicate that waste. We've got to clean it up.
Yep, and we're rapidly finding out that when it comes to the House, we might need 435 new brooms to sweep clean.
Better yet, go rent a street sweeper.
There you go.
We need only one street sweeper, and that street sweeper is Dump the Corruption. That is the Dump the Corruption campaign.
What that would make a really cool meme, by the way. Have a street sweeper and saying cleaning up the corruption in politics.
Yes, that would be a nice meme. So
that might be a good cover photo for the group, by the way. A street sweeper that says cleaning up the corruption in politics.
Sounds great. They support both parties, the insurance companies. And like we saw with the Israel lobbyist, all the lobbyists, they support both parties. It doesn't really matter to them who gets in.
Even and if you, for those of you in the audience, if you rent a home, even your landlord supports politicians. And look at how the cost of housing has jumped up over the last 2 to 4 years. That's because you have these wealthy investors going into neighborhoods, jacking up the price of a home, making them more expensive, and pricing people out of the market.
that's what's been happening all over.
And that's the term market. They call it a market.
Yeah, but it's not a
like
free
family
market.
home. Like years ago, they would say the family home and maybe renting a home, and it was spoke about differently. But once you turned with the market and you had these investors coming in and an investment, it changed the whole playbook.
Okay, Robert Copeland asked who is going to create that meme. Well, we will be contacting very soon now the people we would like to sign on for the meme team. And
I've already got one person already wanting to jump on board already.
that is Cora Emanuel, of course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can make some really good, funny stuff.
Yes, also Sandy Degg would like to sign on to the meme team too, but probably she needs about a month because she has to clear up some things going on at home.
Oh, that's fine. She could take as much time as she needs.
That's what I think too.
And I've always thought the world of Sandy Degg. She is one of the most kind-hearted people that I have ever met in my life.
She's been very kind to me also. She's been a continuous support, of what I do.
Talking about her, like,
Very nice.
through the losses of my two brothers, she has been there for me, supporting me, checking in on me, making sure I'm doing okay. And And it's good to have good friends like Joe Fires, like you, Joe, Dee, Brandy, Sandy, that sort of support structure to help me properly grieve. And I'm telling you firsthand, it's not easy, especially at my age, being in my 30s, to lose two brothers within 2 years and 3 months.
I know that must have been just the most awful thing.
Like, I wasn't fully over the first sibling's death when my second brother passed away. And that makes it even harder. It's like you're just almost to the stage of grief where you're healing, almost healed, and then you rip the Band-Aid off the wound.
Yeah, I know. Or I should say, I can imagine. I never had that happen to me. Had my mother die when I was fairly young, but I never had that 2 deaths in a row thing like that. 2 brothers. That's just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible. Okay, but you've come back a long way now, Greg.
Thanks to the help and love and support from good friends like y'all.
Yes, you have come a long way. It's just so hard.
That's why
Yeah,
I
I'm so
stepped
proud
out
of you,
of the
Greg.
loop for a long time, because I was focusing on myself and my mental health. And then I've come back with a vengeance.
We
like
we are so glad to see you back with a vengeance.
Yes.
with my two brothers, they passed away, one from alcoholism and the other one from substance abuse. If that does not fuel your fight for Medicare for all, then I don't know what will. Like, Medicare for all could have prevented that had they had the good quality access to health care that our politicians, our elected leaders, get for the rest of their life, even when they're out of office.
Real access to health care. Okay. It's
And
just
even if we have to do it the state by state just to prompt a national response, I'm all for it.
oh, so am I. But what real access to health care is, when you need to go see a doctor, you can go. It's free at the point of service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's free for everybody who needs it. And there's enough of a supply. The national government sees to it that there's enough of a supply to provide that health care to everyone. We need a system like that. Okay, it could be that Medicare for all isn't even going to be sufficient to do that. We might have to go to a national health service to get that done, really.
I've also been thinking about that route as well. That I think, honestly, Medicare for all is a good start. It's a stepping stone in the way to a true national health service. First, you start with the private health insurers and the pharmaceutical industry. Then you go to like the medical supply industry and the hospitals. But the one thing that does need to be done away with before we can even have Medicare for all, and this needs to be in a Medicare for all bill, is the total abolishment of the Hyde Amendment. So women can have, let's say a woman needs an abortion. She can go to a national abortion clinic. Let's say a state has an abortion ban. The abortion clinics and the property around it become federal owned property, and then they go from there.
Yes. But as we know, we won't get that passed until we get rid of these candidates who won't hear of it, these office holders, okay, who won't hear of it. We have a leadership structure now, and we're about to have a new leadership structure where no one will support even a Medicare for all bill. And so we just have to get rid of all these people. Okay, we have to dump the corruption. That has to be done first. Okay, Robert Copeland says my stepbrother died. He earlier said that his stepmom and his stepbrother died within 2 years. And he also said my stepbrother died maybe because of COVID-19, but that was before they had a test for COVID-19. But he thinks, okay, it might have been COVID-19. Okay, on that note, I think it's time to say goodnight. Okay, thank you both for helping out.
Always a pleasure to help out and join you anytime.
Yes, I agree. It's always great to be here.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to join you for the 8 o'clock show.
Yes, we're happy to have you.
Even though we put you to work.
Yeah, you put me to work reading that stuff.
Well, that was something that Dee and I said was right up your alley.
Yeah, it was right up my alley. You were right about that. I mean, I was pretty pissed off at that.
No, you aren't. You still love us.
Oh no, I wasn't pissed off at you. I was pissed off at what was in that article.
Oh, it pissed me off too.
In other words, what's right up my alley is stuff that pisses me off. You missed. When I get mad, that's usually when I'm at my best.
Oh.
Okay. Anyway, good night, all. Thank you for
Good
coming.
night, everybody.
And tomorrow night, I'll be back. This time, of course, I'm going to be reporting and analyzing again on what's going on in the Congress, if there's anything more to analyze, but also we'll be covering 3 more members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Thus far, we have covered 7 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and all 7 members failed our litmus test. And I'm sure the next 3 that we're going to go after tomorrow will also fail our litmus test. So we're trying for 100.
We'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. Over the next 10 weeks, we're going to prove that all of them would have failed our litmus test.
And of course, next Friday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I will be also full of piss and vinegar and ready to be pissed off just like you are.
So you're telling me next Friday is going to be a real big night?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
We might.
I'll be getting ready for it.
Because I'm also going to be doing the same thing, but I'm going to go even after those who are in the Israeli lobby.
Oh, that's going to be great.
Yes, it will be great.
Because we've got to dump the corruption in regards to Palestinian rights and peace within the world.
Yes, we do.
Like we cannot have truth. And I would love to see eventually, like what they did in the Roman Empire, like a Pax Romana, which was like 200 years of peace. That would be amazing to have foreign policy, to sign a total peace treaty around the world.
Well, Rome didn't sign a total peace treaty around the world. What it just did was to punish people who were trying to disturb the peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Pax Romana was created by force of arms. So we got to remember that. Okay, folks, good night,
Yes, good night.
Take
See you
care.
all tomorrow.
and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Okay, leave studio.
Yes.